I'm live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and welcome to yet the 8th edition. Kanbala, it happened to be the 8th edition of the Urban Age, which is a show that I decided, I invented it from scratch. This is it. This is the one. You have arrived right there in it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. Today is the 1st of May, which is Kalinyanga Enchakaka. And it is such a pleasure to also be joined here by my guest, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen. Also, just a mic check. Guest, can you hear me wherever you are?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I actually cannot hear you. Can you try and fix your sound and everything on your
No, but
side?
it should be
I
sorted out.
can't hear you at all. And I'm actually supposed to be hearing you.
Okay, that's a pity.
See on my side. All right, let's try again.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
Oh,
I
let me
wonder
leave
what's
and
going
come back.
on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest again, he's going to exit the floor, if I may put it that way. He's having a bit of a sound issue, but nonetheless, that does not mean I can't introduce him to you. My guest is Mr. LUKHONA. Those who know him from ENCA. ENCA, it sounds like ENCA, but nonetheless, his show was called On the Spot with LUKHONA. So those who know him know him. All right, our guest is back. Let's try again. Guest, can you hear me, Mr. LUKHONA?
I can hear you. I don't know
You
if you
can
can
hear me,
hear
but
me.
I can't hear you once again.
It's weird.
What's happening? I want.
Can you hear me?
Are you sure all your volume settings are proper?
Yes, they are.
Okay. I can. Everyone else says diavagalamna, but the problem
No,
now
I
is
can
on
hear
your
you.
side. You can hear me, ne?
Hmm.
But why am not dingakuva? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm scared and worried that I cannot hear my guest at
Can you
all.
hear me?
Can you try again exiting the floor and then upinungene? Let's try
You
maybe
still can't hear me?
I wonder what's going on. But
Mm.
yona izawulunga genkani. It has to. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm having a bit of technical issues. It's stressful. Kunje, but nonetheless, it does not mean that the interview will not be happening. It will be happening. Come hell or high waters, we will be having the guest. So as I was introducing him, Ken City, he is a political analyst. Mr. LUKHONA MNGUNI. Those who know him or knew him would say, I've seen him ENCA. He had a show they called On the Spot. But like I said, he is having a bit of technical issues, stressful ones at that, because Galok, I'm not sure what's going on my side. I believe everything was supposed to be going well. And it is going well for me because I believe I'm audible. So I'm not sure what's going on, but ladies and gentlemen, just please bear with us just a little bit, as we try our best to fix what could be happening. Otherwise, I've tried by all means to uvakala. So let us try again.
Yameazi Radio. No, don't funk with my heart. This is Beyond Frequency. Go! No matter the weather, Keith and Gessie Radio is always on.
Alrighty. Same once again. Mr. LUKHONA, hi.
Hi, can you hear me? Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
I see I have headphones on now, but still,
Yes.
guys.
Can you hear me?
Yes. What could be the issue? And usually, the problem in Jena, it's been a while since I've experienced it. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm really not sure what's happening. I'm so
Let's see.
stressed. Yo, I'm stressing.
Let's see.
So you tried to insert and not and exit ilanduza headphones up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
No settings. Is it possible if you could try getting in with your phone?
Can you hear me?
Maybe your phone's sound will be much better.
Maybe.
This is
Let's
extremely an
try.
inconvenience, but ladies and gentlemen, like I said, please bear with us. Entirely interviews are high
I just
waters.
like
And I'm
StreamYard.
looking
I
at the
don't like
time, I'm
StreamYard.
stressed because I have limited time left with
Can you hear Daddy?
So what you're going to do is you're going to take the link that I gave you and use it on your phone. So you're going to log in with the same link, but on your phone. I will remove you playing now as soon as you've done that.
Wait, we're gonna come back together. Nana, we're going to come back together. We're gonna go to Rakati together. Choma. Take.
Hello? I can actually hear you now.
Okay, let me just.
All right, now I can hear you. Okay. Perfect. Can you try talking for me? And the lighting actually sounds better. Yo, here we go again. I can't hear you, but somehow I could hear you there. What happened? I could hear you with computer. So let's try again on the computer. Yo, and the phone is so clear. All right, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we having technical issues, but just for a moment, I heard him. Let's see. I can hear you now perfectly. Okay, I think sound familiar for maybe let's just say.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but there's an echo going on.
Yes, I'm trying to cancel one of the devices.
Okay,
Because now the two devices on.
I think cancel the phone one because the laptop one I can hear you from it.
So I've canceled the mic on the laptop.
Do you mind also just removing the device altogether?
Which one?
The phone one, because the phone one that we're not gonna be using right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, and there's no echo. Right? Can you turn your camera on now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, fantastic. I just need to fight with my little man.
I can see he also wants to be part of the talk.
Yeah, he's always part of everything that I do, even my meetings.
Yeah, no, I can see it's gonna be a bit of an issue, but yeah, I'm just happy we got you. Your echo sounds good, and but yeah, my people would like to see because
Yes. Let me fight with this little man quickly for a minute.
It's not a problem. Okay. Not a problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, for those who are actually watching, this is my guest, and he's having family time and family issues at the same time because Galoko he needs to sort of remove a little man from the screen as the interview will be virtual. So in a moment's time, he will be joining us. And thank you so much for your patience as well. As Bakhonilos in they're very popular, they're very Bakhona. So yeah, let's welcome Mr. MNGUNI. Mr. MNGUNI, welcome. Apologize for the many thousand problems you had, but guys, it happens. We are happy to have you here. And yeah, welcome to the Urban Age. I'm here for 2 or 1.5 hours. I invite guests that I believe will make a difference. So I chose you because I knew whatever you say, it will definitely touch someone's life somewhere, somehow. So thank you for coming to the Urban Age and after so many problems you had.
Oh, yini bethunana molweni bantu base Keith Ngesi Radio and Urban Age followers. Very good evening to you all. Apologies for the multiple mishaps. Technology is good when it works. It's terrible when it doesn't. I always say
when it doesn't. Say that again. All right, Mr. MNGUNI, remember we spoke off air and obviously just off the interview that I want more than anything for this to be a message to the youth, because we had celebrated Freedom Day. So we cannot run away from the fact that Freedom Day, as much as it's freedom, but it has everything to do with the youth and what the youth has to bring. And also just talking about the elections on the 29th of May, we will be there. So we want you to just make us understand also just how important is it for the youth to embark on this journey of elections and just being part of the journey, being part of all of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, thanks, Yamkel. And I mean, it's always an interesting thing. And you become of age, or you come of age, and you start being used to the idea of independence. So, I mean, the voting age starts at 18, though you can register to vote at 16, but you can only vote when you are 18. And quite a number of things are happening in your life when you are 18, at least in the average life of a South African, which is around 18. That's when you are completing your high school. It's either you are in matric or you are first year at university. You are moving out of home to go stay at res. If you are fortunate enough to be part of those who get into higher institutions of learning. If you are unfortunate, you are at home, but you are thinking of work and a sense of freedom from your own circumstances, a freedom to discover yourself. And I think freedom then becomes quite an interesting topic for young people, because there are multiple stages in youth where you are discovering your freedom. Once you've gone through the post-schooling process, you then get the freedom to go to the workplace. Again, if you are fortunate enough to be part of those who can find a job, because we know that youth unemployment is extremely high in our country. So if you are unemployed, you are still trying to make a meaning out of your life, and you find ways, whether you are volunteering, whether you're spending time in the church, whether you're spending time with your friends in the neighborhood and so on, just to have something that keeps you going. But there's always this idea that freedom is beckoning. There's something that you are aspiring towards. Now, the freedom that we talk about in terms of political freedom, that it has been sort of 30 years of some level of freedom in South Africa since 1994.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, this is something that generations and generations of people aspired towards through the struggles against, imperialism during the colonialism period, during the apartheid period. And there were always just these struggles to free Black people from the bondages of oppression, particularly by a minority of a settler community of people who came from Europe and found a home and made a home out of South Africa, and then fought wars to displace native people out of their communities and so on. But freedom has also come to mean different things to different people, because our circumstances are very different. Singabantu. So abanye abantu are looking for freedom to be. Some people are looking for freedom from. And so some people are looking for freedom to be great, to be excellent, to be recognized, to have an identity. I mean, it's still scary, but it's the truth that in many communities, including Apoko Monti and other communities, kukhona abantwana abangenazi birth certificates because their parents did not register them. Did not register the birth within 30 days, as the law stipulates from Home Affairs. And what this does is that these kids grow up without an identity. And then you've got to ask yourself, how can we talk of freedom when these kids just are looking for freedom to be recognized as South Africans. Because for as long as they don't have these birth certificates, I mean, forget that they can't earn the the child support grant. Forget that they can't get into a school in some instances because the teachers say, well, we can't claim for this child from, the learner support that we get from the Department of Basic Education because they are deemed as Isbabab or Isgubu or whatever, as bogus learners who don't exist because they don't have an ID. And some schools keep these learners, but then when it comes to writing matric and now they need to have a birth certificate or an ID, they can't do that because they are not in the population registry. So when we talk about freedom, the meaning of freedom differs from different people. Other people have gone to school, they've got a diploma, they've got a degree, but they've never found work. And not that they are not looking for work, they are looking for work, but they are looking now for freedom to be economically active, to be recognized, and to be validated that the years that they spent in school have not been in vain. And that's why sometimes when I do research in some communities, some people say, but what's the value of education if our kids still go to school and then they come back and sit here at home after all these years and sacrifices of putting them through school? So the idea of freedom has many meanings, and it depends on where one is in their life process. And I think for young people, there are multiple things that they are looking for in a very difficult world that has changed quite a bit, even in the last 30 years of freedom in South Africa. There are so many opportunities, there are so many distractions as well that young people can fall prey to. And I think to talk about freedom, to talk about young people, to talk about purpose, because freedom is meant to give us, and that's why the Constitution is very clear. I mean, we've got freedom of belief in terms of what you believe in. So nobody here in this country can force you to be Christian. Nobody can force you to be Muslim or force you to be Hindu or whatever. We've got freedom of belief. We've got freedom of consciousness, which means that we can form ideologies of life in our own minds and live out those ideologies, so as long as they do not impede other people's rights and freedoms and so on. So the scope of freedom, I mean, freedom to trade, freedom of movement. I mean, I remember a few weeks ago I did an interview and someone asked me, what is the one thing that I think has been the biggest achievement of democracy? And I said, the fact that I can actually drive from Johannesburg to Flagstaff in the Eastern Cape and cut across 4 provinces. And nobody stops me to say, let me identify myself if I have permission to be in this province, or I have permission to be driving on this particular road and so on. That is a massive form of liberation, that I can drive 1,000 kilometers without being asked for a pass, without being asked for a curfew time, for permits and passports, because now I'll be moving from one republic to the next Bantustan and all of those things. These things are important and meaningful, but it depends where you are in life, because that sense of freedom of movement might be meaningless to a person who is still fighting for the very basics, to have water, to have shelter over their head, to have food in their tummy, and all of these other things that we take for granted because we wake up, switch on a shower, forget that there are people who don't even have the luxury to know where their next water bucket is going to come from.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. MNGUNI, for that knowledge. And just to touch on what you said about how you had to look back and think how fortunate you are to have the ability to move around without anyone worrying that anyone's going to stop you and ask you, are you even allowed to do this? Are you even allowed to be here? So honestly, that is freedom and privilege that we don't really have the time to think back, because we're so focused on what's next, but also there's others who don't even have the time or the privilege to think about that because of the walks of life that they've been through. Now, Mr. MNGUNI, can you just take us through how do you think political parties can sort of prioritize the concerns of the youth, or priorities rather of the youth, and just to ensure that their voices are heard on election day and beyond going forward?
No, I think it starts with the set of policies that political parties prioritize and the things that they then go to parliament or the provincial legislatures to champion. In the first instance, I think everybody should be looking at unlocking the barriers or structural problems in the economy to make sure that we've got an economy that actually creates jobs for young people. But I think we need to really focus on basic education to make sure that we decrease the dropout rates of young people. So I think that one of the things that is extremely worrying is that we talk about youth or young people once they become that age, but we don't focus and say, well, today's baby is tomorrow's youth. And therefore, how do I make sure that the developmental steps of this baby ensure that outside the outcome that I get in 18 years is a sound and quality youth that will contribute meaningfully to the country. So we still have a high number of people who start grade 1 but never make it to matric. They drop out and so on. If you look at the statistics in terms of, the majority of people who are unemployed are people who have never finished matric. So that tells you that we've got to focus our outcomes on basic education. And some people might say, well, matric is not the gold standard and so on. But the point really is that we lose a lot of young people in the schooling system, and they go into all directions, and their lives go into disarray, and they get consumed by drugs and substance abuse. They get consumed by criminality and gangsterism. They get consumed by loitering in their communities and really having meaningless and purposeless lives. And I think everybody listening in on this might, think of somebody who's committed suicide in the last 3 months or 5 months. Because the rates of suicides amongst young people are increasing, and that's because their lives have become meaningless and there's nothing really to look forward to. And therefore, this self-defeat affects the mental well-being of people. And in that sense, some people then decide to simply just take their lives to be absent from the struggles of the day-to-day, because they feel they find no purpose. They find they are not useful as human beings. They see other people waking up, going to school. They see other people waking up, going to work. And that's why we've got this bracket of people that we call not in employment, education, or training, the NEET group. And it keeps expanding, and it's a real problem that we've got that kind of thing. And I mean, the liberation movement led by Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, one of the things that Julius Nyerere in his time focused on was that he wanted to build a country where there are no loitering young people across the streets, because he found that as a risk to the social fabric. And that's why in our country, really, whether it's protests, they mushroom very quickly, whether it's political parties wanting to do rallies. I mean, I'm fascinated by how many people can pitch up for an event on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. That's because there's just so many people who are not at work, who are in their communities, and therefore, when there's these political activities and things, they give them some meaning to participate in something. So I think political parties in the first instance really need to put their pound of flesh behind backing the developmental process of young people, which starts at the early childhood development. Because if you get those first 1,000 days wrong of any child, there's high likelihood that you will stunt their cognitive development, their ability to think, process things, comprehend, and critically analyze things. You will stunt their motor skills, their ability to move and do things, and you'll stunt their problem-solving skills. And of course, the language development and all of these things, and ease of learning, which are all really the soft skills. And I think we focus a lot on the hard skills. What do you have? What don't you have? But the reality is that we need to focus on developing the soft skills that people need for lifelong learning to contribute meaningfully to society. And I think political parties need to do that. But I think young people themselves need to have a different conversation, because young people have found different spaces for them to articulate themselves, for them to be active, for them to participate in society. But they have started to veer off from politics because they believe that politics aren't giving them enough a solution to their problems. But I want to say to young people, politics are so important, because there is no government without politics. And a lot of the resources, I mean, we've got a government that spends over R1 trillion. We're not even talking millions or billions, R1 trillion every year. And young people need to be able to be organized and influence, one, who can be voted potentially into government by choosing political parties they believe, communicate the best vision for young people in this country. 2, to hold those political parties accountable in between elections. And 3, to make sure that they keep pressuring those political parties through pickets, through petitions, through marches, through calling into radio platforms and all of these things, writing to these political parties for them to do the right thing for young people, to avail opportunities materially that will give young people sustainable jobs, not short-term employment where young people get a salary for 3 months, 6 months. They create expectations of their own lives. They get into debt and all of this thing. Then when the opportunity is gone, they are now indebted. They are now in more trouble than they were 6 months ago when they didn't have that opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. MNGUNI. Just speaking on the youth as well. I know you said you don't have much time with me, but now we've commemorated the Freedom Day, and just looking forward now, looking towards the future. How would you envision the role of the youth, and also just shaping a more inclusive and just democratic society going forward?
Well, look, I think the role of the youth is a very difficult thing to talk about, particularly when you think of it politically, because whilst the youth has space to define its own agenda, the older generations are also trying to co-opt the youth to its own agenda. And that's what I call, or that's what we really call the intergenerational conflict, where where we talk about, as Gramsci would say, the old is refusing to die, and the new is struggling to be born, and really what that communicates is this society that has a tension where there are those who are failing to make space for a younger generation of people to come on board, and this younger generation of people is quite eager to take up space. I mean, I'm sure you hear it a lot in youth spaces where people talk about taking up space. We need to take up space. We need to be represented. We need to do this, but there is a bottleneck in the system that is making it difficult for young people to take up that space. And that's because the other people are not used to not having the power, because with power comes privilege, with power comes authority, with authority comes, assertion. And with that assertion can come, in one way or the other, influence for better or worse, or for self-gain or for societal gain. And I think that young people really need to get spaces where they define in real terms their own agenda, and they are serious about being organized. There's nothing that defeats a system rather than being organized. And unfortunately, the lives that we live these days seem to make us believe that we are better off as individuals than part of a collective. And that's why even some people, when they are unhappy with their parents, they tend to opt out of the family structure rather than to opt into the family structure. They then say, no, rather than if but the point really is that you cannot not be part of a collective. That's why we talk, you're not an island. You can't exist as an island. And I think this is something that we need to really communicate to young people, that this idea that you can be an island is wrong. Humanity, society, thrives when people can live in community, live in solidarity, and be each other's keepers. So these ideas of my brother and my sister's keeper are not just philosophical ideas, but it's about how best is it to organize society. And that's why in a number of societies, including ours here in South Africa, we then say, well, it's important to live in community, but we must also note that there will be minorities in those communities. And that's why minority rights become important. That's why the ideas of, different communities coming together to say, but we will fight for our own stake as well, whether it's the LGBTIQA plus community, whether it is, communities of people living with disabilities, who then say nothing for us without us. We don't want to be left behind. And that's because you are understanding that this society of a collective can be framed in normative narratives that, favor the able-bodied, that favor men, that favor white people, that favor, those who have wealth and have money and have jobs. And this is why it's important to think of a society in communities. And I think that we've always been saying that we need a critical mass to transform society, and young people are actually a massive constituency. But if you look in terms of voter registration, the age group between 18 and 24. Those young people are not registered because they have not found meaning in politics and they are disinterested in politics. And I think it's about time those young people caucus one another, find ways to create an agenda that they want to champion and that they want to translate into political outcomes. And in that sense, begin to be organized, articulate their agenda, influence others to embrace their agenda, and then move forward and really, lobby for that. But what it's going to take is a mindset shift where people must really believe that they cannot be islands, they can't be individuals, they have to live within collectives, and they must find those collectives. And I'm not saying that young people are not organized. There are many young people in our communities who are doing fantastic things, who are, shaping their micro societies. But I think what is important is to get out of the micro kind of idea. So we feel good when we solve a problem in our neighborhood, on our streets, when we volunteer in the church and we get things done for Ugogo in the community and so on. But we now need to start thinking and broaden our horizon and think in the macro and think about the country and think about the society that we want to live in, and the society that our children should live in 30 years' time, in 50 years' time, and the kind of country that we want to live in, and therefore not see government as for old people, because that's what old people have managed to do. And that's why when you talk to some of the old elderly people, actually I bumped into him, I won't mention him, earlier today, I mean, very senior politicians who's often always saying, no, we'll tell the young people when they are ready. They are not ready now. All they want to do is just to come and loot. So it's as if there's a competition for looting. So looting must be reserved for the elderly. And then when they are done, and there's nothing left for young people, it's a corpse that is left, a carcass. And then the young people can take over the carcass. And that is the material risk. So I think young people really need to see themselves as not a government or a leadership of tomorrow, which is what old people like saying when they talk to young people. You are the leaders of tomorrow. And they are talking to 25-year-olds, but they are saying you are the leaders of tomorrow. But those are the leaders of today. Because if you read in history, across the universe, if you read in history, the people who have shaped political moments have often been very young.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mule. I can't even look for the as a result because I'm so in what you are saying. But nonetheless, thank you so much for that information. And to summarize it, for anyone, I doubt there's anyone who though, but just to summarize it, basically what Mr. MNGUNI is saying is that with the youth, we are not the youth of tomorrow. As much as our older leaders will say, hi, you are the youth of tomorrow, we are the youth of today. And we need to form a community of that realization, because the more that happens, the more then we will be more seen and more recognized in society, and the more our voices will be heard, and the more our needs will be, taken care of, or rather to be recognized, because small steps, baby steps. So nonetheless, if there's anything else you'd like to add, Mr. MNGUNI, the floor is yours. But from me, I'm now on my side. And thank you so much for coming to the Urban Age once again. I must not pass that time.
No, I know, Yamkela. But just to say, I know that our politics have disappointed a lot of people, and young people have been thrown, into the deep end. When they look for opportunities, some people want you to bribe them and pay them to give you an opportunity. Whereas for young females, people want to sleep with you to give you an opportunity. But I think in the midst of all of that, one thing that people must not lose sight of is the bigger picture, that there is a country, it does deserve young people to make conscious decisions about who to vote for, particularly those registered young people. They must scan the environment and really decide if they think all the politicians are bad, they must think who is the least bad, because what we can't afford is to not make a choice at all. Not that you can't complain if you don't make the choice. You can complain. It's your country, it's your money, it's your future. So this thing that you can't complain if you don't vote is also useless. But the point is that you want to meaningfully influence the outcome. And I think on the 29th of May, which is about 28 days from now, and in about 2 hours, 12 minutes, the voting stations would be closing. I would really implore those young people who are registered to vote to at least make the effort to turn out and make a choice, at least bad choice out of the bad choices, if that's how they
Out
feel.
of the variety of bad choices we
Yeah,
have.
and at least stand tall and proud and say, look, I made my mark, and my mark will influence an outcome.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. MNGUNI. I
Thank you,
think
Yamkela.
let me let you go, and just for you sacrificing the least time that you had to be with me, and also safe travels once again.
Thank you. Truly appreciate it, to you and your listeners.
All right, thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, that was Mr. LUKHONA MNGUNI. As a political analyst, those who know him once again know him from his show ENCA called On the Spot with LUKHONA MNGUNI. He definitely gave us what we needed to hear. He portrayed a message to the youth that the youth needed to hear as well, because at the end of the day, I did say that Kona also iphethe from the discussion that I was having with Mr. MNGUNI. And once again, the youth will benefit. The youth has benefited, because he did say that make sure that as the youth, you come as a collective. You build a community in a society so that your voice can be heard, so that you can represent, or be a representation of something. So I believe that is so important of him to say, because at the end of the day, Nyanike, alone standing, you won't make much impact. You can, but it won't be as big as forming a community, making sure that your voice is heard. Because at the end of the day, make a voter. Yes, you're voting for the country, blah, 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 but mostly you are doing it for yourself. You're making sure that is the one way that you make sure that you are heard. And the voting lines, like Obechilo, I think 29th of May, they will be open, and it's 28 days left. So make sure that you make sure you run straight to the voting lines. And we commend once again the youth that has decided to register to vote this year, because the political engagement here, youth, I feel, has improved in the biggest and the best over the years coming. Looking at even how young people, like first years, people in high school, they're really pushing the agenda of politics and making sure that they are registering to vote. And the registrations this year, the number was absolutely great, meaning that young people really are putting themselves out there. They are voting for the least terrible. There's no best one. So the least terrible one to you, make sure that you stand there with ballot and vote for it, because you're as a lulu bomi, and probably you're that ukumamele. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me, We Urban Age, and thank you so much once again for always just being with me, and for joining me first because Get is the first, and happy Workers' Day to those chilling at home. And man, it's been good, it's been great. The time now is 52 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. That means it's 8 minutes before Get si vale, but nonetheless, thank you to those who commented as well. I'm seeing the comments here, and guys, thank you for your support. All right, but this have a great evening, everyone, and enjoy the few hours left of Workers' Day, because to say Pela, just a few hours left to get before Workers' Day. But nonetheless, good